Welcome back to the Interviewing People CareerCast, featuring highlights from last week's full-length interview with Colin Causey, a computer scientist who once worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory and is now a graduate student at Case Western Reserve University. Colin will be sharing about his educational and career paths, including some of the most interesting work he has experienced. So sit back, relax, and know you can always watch our full interview if you'd like to learn more. Enjoy the show.
So in high school, I think I was definitely intent on being a game developer. I wanted to go into game development and be a computer graphics engineer. I was always really interested in kind of developing the technology behind what you see on the screen and simulating light realistically and making photographic looking images on screen. But shortly after graduating from high school, I got really into philosophy. And I got less interested in game development. There's also the problem of 80-hour work weeks, which didn't sound like a lot of fun. Yeah, I got really into philosophy, and then I went into college. And at that point, I thought, well, I think I probably want to be a software engineer of some sort, but maybe not a game developer. But I ended up double majoring in computer science and philosophy with a mathematics minor. I got my first internship sophomore year of college. I worked at a software startup in Findlay, founded by Terry Terhark. So I worked there for a summer and just kind of wrote code all day. And at the time, I loved it. I thought, like, oh, this is great. I just writing code all day. But then a couple years later, I thought, I don't know if that's what I really want to do is just kind of write code all day, sitting in front of a screen. The Department of Energy has a program called Science Undergraduate Laboratory Internships, or the SULLI program. And so he said, well, that would be a great thing to do. I think we had one previous student from the University of Findlay that had been accepted to the program before. So I went ahead and applied, and I was accepted. So then I went to Argonne National Laboratory, which is one of 17 national laboratories in the country associated with the Department of Energy. And they're based near Chicago. So that was a 4-month internship, and I basically just lived in the hotel on the laboratory premises. All of that was provided as part of it. So I just stayed in the hotel and had room service, which was nice. And it was convenient because I could just walk to my office right from the hotel. Although some of the Chicago winter days were pretty brutal.
Yeah, it would be.
But yeah, so I worked with a computational chemist there working on a thermochemical database application. So I basically had to come up with a database that allowed us to store a lot of thermochemical information about different chemical substances and thermodynamic properties pertaining to them. So I had to kind of design the database, kind of read in the information, and then be able to version control it as well, where we had different versions of our data going back, I think, to the early 2000s. And the idea was to make it easy to easily access any particular version of the data at any time, and to allow people to do interesting queries like, okay, so suppose I upload this new experimental data, how does that change the overall state of the database? How does it change calculations with some of these chemical substances? So that was interesting. It was, the challenge there was the fact that it was, I only had a very short time to develop it. It was a shorter internship. So after I finished the internship at Argonne, then I took like maybe a month off, and then I applied to Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I had been recommended by my boss at Argonne to look at other national labs that would have additional opportunities. So I applied there, and I think my experience at a national lab before that was really significant. So I had an interview that went really well. And so then I started working at Oak Ridge, and I worked there for about a year. So that was kind of my first task, was like wrangling these databases and getting them under control. So it was definitely stressful at first. I made a blunder where I pushed a bad change to a database, and then I just see someone say in Slack, like, "Did somebody just mess with something?" I'm like, "Oh no!" But we got to figure it out. And once because the issue is, like, I was trying to like sew my parachute as I was falling. It was like I had to get them under control and get them synced, but at the same time the developers were continuing to make changes to them.
Right.
So I couldn't just say like, "Hey, you guys gotta stop working," so I had to do it all at once. So that was the challenge at first, but I think 6 months into it, I got pretty comfortable, and things went pretty well. So I think I was always planning on going to grad school. After undergrad, I was a little bit burned out, so I wanted to take a little time off and work full time, which I actually liked a lot better. It was just kind of nice. For the most part, when I was done at work, I was done. I could just, the rest of the evening was mine. Weekends were always off. Every now and again, I took work home with me, mostly just because I thought, well, I should have gotten this done and I didn't. So I might work a Saturday or two on something. And every now and again, like some weird thing would pop up one of our systems, my boss would Slack me and I would just briefly intervene to fix it. But that was usually in like 30 minutes at most after I got back to my apartment. So I did like that a lot better overall. No homework and no exams to study for. But I ultimately thought, like, well, 10 years from now, would I regret not going to grad school or going to grad school more? And I decided, well, I probably regret not going to it. So I thought, like, well, 10 years from now, it's like, man, I should have done that. At this point, it's like, it's kind of too late probably. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to grad school then. For the most part, emails were for the purpose of like laboratory-wide stuff, whereas like the individual teams use Slack. And communication is extremely important, especially in software development, where you're working on this large piece of software, everybody's writing code in different parts of the system at the same time, and you got to coordinate changes and releases of the software to the customer. So it's huge. If you have one developer who's working on one thing and then you don't know that and you're working on the same thing, that's a huge waste of time. There's going to be a lot of conflicts, whatever. So it's really important. And the advantage of Slack over email is that it's a lot quicker generally. It's basically just, an instant messaging thing, basically analogous to text. But in addition to that, we also had daily stand-up meetings where we would just hop on to Skype or Teams or whatever for 20 minutes to give like a daily update. Like, here's what I did yesterday. Here's the issue I'm having. And then we can kind of coordinate work for the next day. I think Oak Ridge is probably the most interesting place. Originally, it was part of the Manhattan Project. Okay. So we did a lot of like nuclear weapons research and stuff there originally back in the day. Now, as far as I know, I've been told that we no longer do weapons research, but I wouldn't know if they did. I didn't have clearance. One thing we're notable for is supercomputing. So Oak Ridge had for a while the most powerful supercomputer in the world, and we're shortly going to get the #1 position again. So our current one is called Frontier. Well, the one under development is called Frontier, and that's going to be an exascale supercomputer, which means that it can do in excess of 10 to the 18 or a quintillion computations per second. We're also known for, we have a huge 3D printing facility. So we actually 3D printed a Shelby Cobra in 24 hours. Now, with our current technology, we can make that print in 12 hours. I think our peak is like 1,000 pounds of material printed per hour. And then I also saw this, basically this kind of clothes dryer that used hypersonic vibrations to dry the clothes. So basically, they would take a soaking wet cloth and they would put it on this thing, and it would kind of scream it dry. You could just see the water just fly off of it, and it was dry in 3 seconds. So they were looking to try to come up with a form factor where they could actually sell it as a product, so people could actually use it as a drying machine at home.
Thank you for watching this episode showing highlights of the latest Interviewing People CareerCast with Colin Causey. And to make your Mondays better than ever, subscribe so you can hear more career stories from those who are actually doing the work. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember that the best part about Mondays is interviewing people.